Hi, Professor Mendes, are you there? Hello.
Hello. I am here.
Hello, Professor Mendes, are you there?
Yes. Hello.
Yeah, hi, I can
Hi,
hear you
hello.
now. Yeah, hi, how are you?
Hello, fine, thank you.
Can you please switch on your video? Is
Yes,
it
of
possible?
course.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm the message I get is that the host needs to
Enable, okay, just let me just, okay, yeah. Yeah, see if you can enable now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello.
Good. Hi. This is also streaming on Facebook Live. So there are many people who've joined us there. This is a parallel session that we are running in the conference. And first of all, I must thank you that you agreed to this particular talk. So I'll briefly introduce you, and then maybe we can go ahead and listen to you. So for the viewers and participants who joined us,
thank you.
Dr. Anna Cristina Mendes is Associate Professor in English Studies at the School of Arts and Humanities, University of Lisbon. She uses cultural and post-colonial studies to examine literary and screen texts, in particular, intermedia adaptations as venue for resistant knowledge formations in order to expand upon theories of epistemic injustice. One of her research interests is in Victorian afterlives, specifically the global post-colonial dimensions of Victorianism and its fandoms. I think this is briefly her research area, and maybe if there is anything that I have missed, maybe she can add. And of course, she's going to talk about in this whole COVID-19 crisis, a crisis of different sort today. Over to you, Professor Anna.
Thank you so much. Let me just, I'm not sure if my connection is okay. Can you hear me? Oh, okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
At some point, I get this message that the connection is not good. If it's not, I'll open the door because it will get better. Just let me know. Okay, so sure. Can I share my screen?
Yes, please? Yes.
Okay, okay, yeah, okay, so I'll share it when necessary. Okay, so now for a proper hello. I hope everyone and their families are doing well. These are very challenging times. We've been hearing that for many months now, and we have grown used to this, but not that much. At least the pandemic has led to the development of events such as this, which is absolutely great from my perspective. So let me thank Dr. Priyanka Tripathi for having invited me for this focus talk. It's an honor and a privilege. I had seen the call for papers for this conference, and it was a big surprise when I got her email. So thank you, Dr. Priyanka. Because this is a very short talk, and these times ask for also short brief. And Priyanka, please, if I go over time, let me know, and I'll shut up. Thank you. Oh, if you have any questions, just interrupt me, and okay, we're good to go. So let me now try to share my screen, which should, nope, sorry. Okay. Okay. Yeah. It says I'm sharing the screen, but I don't, am I?
Yes, yes, we can see your screen.
Oh, great. Okay, because yeah, okay, this is Zoom. I should be used to it by now, but yeah, okay, so you can see it. Okay, so yeah, now I'm set. Sorry, oops. Okay, so let me briefly go through the images before I just do my talk, because my talk is in, in the screen. So I need to show you the pictures first and then revert to my Word document. Okay, so the first image that, okay, as you can see from the title of my talk, I'll be talking about beheading statues, or in fact about more recent events about the toppling of statues, especially focused in the UK, but also in the US, although this has been a worldwide phenomena, even here in Portugal, which is a very, nothing happens really here, but that happened also. We had also the defacing of statues. So it was something that spread, as we all know, because of the assassination, the killing of George Floyd. So the first statue I'll be talking about is precisely Edward Colston's statue, which was toppled and pushed into the British Harbour in the UK. And then I'll be moving on to the focus of my talk, which is Queen Victoria statue in in Guyana, first in British Guyana. And you have here one pre-independence picture, which is the one on your right, in 1954, where you see Queen Victoria beheaded, and the statue was beheaded by nationalist, anti-colonialist activists before independence. And in the middle, you have the main focus of my talk, which is Hugh Locke's Hinterland, which is an artwork where the artist superimposes colors and ghostly figures onto this same statue of Queen Victoria. And on your left, you have proof that this statue of Queen Victoria has been the object of protests, ongoing protests. So this is a very recent one from 2018, but it happens all the time. And people are really not happy with having this statue there. And I'll talk a little bit about the story of the statue from its creation for the Golden Jubilee. And then it was put in the backyard, and then it was reinstated in its original location. And that is where people have been doing all these protests and spreading cans of paint, that kind of protests that you see here on your left. Okay, so this is a reference I'll be doing to this book by Judith Butler and Athena Athanasiou, very interesting about the dispossession of subjectivities. And you can see, and I'm going back to this Hugh Locke's Hinterland artwork. You can see there, it's yellow. It's not the greatest color for digital projection, but that's the color that he used. Of course, that's a tropical color. That is why it's this color. It's yellow, it's green. Those are tropical, but these are not very good for projection. But you can see that at the top of the image, you have skeletons. At the bottom, you have what we would say indigenous subjects banging in their drums. So, okay, this has to do with the idea of dispossessing subjectivities. And that is why I turn to Judith Butler and Athena Athanasiou. This is also on the topic of beheading statues, and this was an exhibit that was for the Venice Biennale in 2015 by the RIOC Media Collective, and it's entitled Coronation Park. And I'll talk a little bit about the story of this art installation. And you can see that these statues, they are all missing parts. And also you can see that in their plinth, and on the bases where they stand, you have some words there, some phrases there, and you cannot see them because, of course, but you can look them up, and they are from George Orwell's Burmese Days. So I'll be talking a little bit also about that. And for a more recent touch, here's one of my favorite shows at this point. I've seen all of it and looking forward to more episodes. Handmaid's Tale, Hulu's adaptation of Margaret Atwood's novel from 1986. So this is the adaptation, and this particular episode was aired in 2019. And in case you haven't seen it, this is the moment where the action relocates from Boston to Washington, the place where freedom is nowhere to be seen. So there, the handmaids have to wear a mouth cover. This has nothing to do with the pandemic. It has to do with not talking. And you can see that Lincoln in the back, this is the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, has been beheaded. And of course, we can read this as the end of freedom, probably the beginning, the reinstatement of slavery. Everything can be read from this. So, and then I will go back to Hulock's hinterland. And of course, because of this introduction, I will be without some minutes. So please, Priyanka, let me know when I go over time. Okay, so I just wanted to show you these images first, so that to give you the scope of the presentation, which I know is a short presentation, so will not be going on too long, I hope. Very mindful of the time, because these internet times are different from in presence time. So, okay. Okay, so now for some more detail. And going back to the beginning. So it's been almost 3 months since the police killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis. And this is but one symptom of this crisis of racialization and social inequality that has been going on for centuries. As you know, from one of the key words in my title is crisis. So I'm very interested in this idea of crisis, how we move from crisis to imagination, and the role of artists in doing that. Of course, that's a key role for artists in these moments. We are always in moments of crisis, and this idea of crisis is taken up over and over again. So of course, we are always in moments of crisis. But this is a particular crisis of a symptom of a crisis of racialization, social inequality that in fact has been going on for centuries. And the fact is that after 3 months, protests are still very much out there, and probably not as visible as they were, of course, in the direct aftermath, but they are not gone by a long way. So we've all watched in the news how several statues of historical figures were pulled down or defaced around the world. And this has rekindled a debate in the public sphere over the legacies of oppression, racism, and cruelty. In fact, when I started working on this, I was inspired by the protests of a Hindu nationalist group that was protesting against a particular statue of Queen Victoria in Delhi, if I'm not mistaken, but I can share the details later. And this had to do with, I'm going a bit off script, but this had to do with an article I was writing on Victoria and Abdul. And those of you who have seen the film, if you haven't, you're not missing much. But those of you who've seen the film will know that the film ends with Abdul kissing the feet of a Victoria statue outside the Taj Mahal or in the gardens next to the Taj Mahal. And there were protests by a Hindu nationalist group, a right-wing Hindu group. There were protests about the filming of that particular scene outside the Taj Mahal. And that was what got me into this issue of statues. That was in 2017. So it was, of course, and this debate around statue has been going on since antiquity. So this is not, of course, recent. But going back to the George Floyd protests, in one particular week, and that was the first week of June, we saw the graffitiing of Confederate monuments in the US, the beheading of a statue of Columbus in Boston, the defacing of a statue of King Leopold II in Brussels, and many, many other artifacts of public and monumental art. So this particular week in June was very active, and very much all this beheading and defacing was all over the news. And this brings me to my first case, which is the toppling and the throwing into the harbor of Edward Colston's statue. And Edward Colston is a slave, or was, sorry, a slave trader. And this statue and the toppling and throwing into the harbor received a lot of media attention. And again, as I mentioned, Colston was traded in slaves, and he was a board member of the Royal African Company and later its deputy governor. So the pulling down of his bronze statue, so the first statue that you saw, its physical elimination from the public space and the dumping into the harbor was an act of protest which many saw unfolding through social media, through Facebook, through Twitter. So that was very much a social media, because we were already in the middle of the pandemic. So there were many accusations made to the toppling of the statue, in particular that these anti-racism protesters were destroying our, and what we mean by our cultural memory, attacking our history. And in response to this, the historian and broadcaster, the British historian and broadcaster, David Olusoga, stated a few days later that, and I would like to underscore this statement by Olusoga, that the toppling of Edward Colston's statue is not an attack on history. It is history. So it's part of history. It is history. It's history being made, these attacks and this topplings and this defacing of statues. So whose memory are we talking about when we talk about public art as supporting collective memory? Specifically, when we talk about statues of Confederate soldiers or slaveholders, imperialists like Queen Victoria. So again, in this crisis in 2020, two ideas are foregrounded: the ideas of crisis, the ideas of culture. All of us have heard the deployment or redeployment of these ideas of crisis and culture. This discussion is cyclical, and frequently involves issues of memory. This idea of crisis continues to be used in moments of social and political unrest. Think about the suffragettes, think about the right to vote, think about slaves' emancipation. So it's all used in these moments of social and political unrest. And this is a rhetoric which is very much based, or I see as based, in Matthew Arnold's opposition between culture and anarchy. And we get this Arnoldian rhetoric all over. It's used, continuously used. Of course, they don't say it's Matthew Arnold's rhetoric, but it's this opposition between culture and anarchy. They are destroying our culture. They are being anarchists. Every time there's this fight against systemic inequalities, here comes the Arnoldian rhetoric. So, going now to the statue of Queen Victoria that I showed. So you had in the middle this artwork called Hinterland, and it was made in 2013 by an artist called Hugh Locke. He is Scottish Guyanese, so he's Scottish with Guyanese heritage. And this particular statue was commissioned for Victoria's Golden Jubilee. It was inaugurated in 1894, and it was placed outside the Supreme Court in Georgetown, then British Guiana. So in 1894, it was put in outside the Supreme Court. Then you saw that picture on the right when in 1954, some 60 years after it was erected in outside the Supreme Court, some 60 years later, there were some protests by the People's Progressive Party of Guyana. And in 1954, as I mentioned, both the left hand and the head of Victoria's statue were destroyed by dynamite. So after independence and the establishment of the Republic of Guyana in 1966, I would like to remind you that the territory was established as a British colony in 1831. So after independence, the statue of Victoria was removed from outside the law courts and discarded behind the botanical gardens. So of course, as it happens all the time, it also happened when African countries became independent of Portugal, and all the statues of Portuguese colonialists were put in a particular place outside of eyes view. And the same thing happened with Victoria's statue. So in 1990, it was put back again in its original location. It had been sent to England for restoration. And again, in 1990, it was replaced in its original location some 30 years after it was taken out. So inspired by this reinstatement, Locke created this artwork, which resignifies both the statue, which is, as we all know, the archetypal public art form of 19th century empires, and also resignifies Victoria, who is the grand signifier of colonialism, slavery, indentureship, whatever you would like to the meanings you would like to attribute to Victoria. So as I mentioned, I'm very interested in the artistic undoing of this, and this is a mouthful, archival spectrality, so the specters who cannot or which cannot be archived. So they are the specters, the ghosts that linger on, supposedly archived, but refuse to be archived. So I'm interested in this undoing of the unarchival spectrality of dispossessed subjectivities. And this is, again, a mouthful, and I borrowed this idea from Judith Butler and Athena Athanasiou from the book I showed you from 2013, entitled Dispossession. So, again, the void in the materiality of this statue was for me very much reminiscent of the installation Coronation Park by the Rax Media Collective that I showed. And you saw that there were many sculptures in that installation, and that installation was for the Venice Biennale in 2015. And you had in that installation 9 fiberglass sculptures. And this Coronation Park, as you know much better than I, quotes the name of the site that was built in New Delhi in 1877 to proclaim Queen Victoria as Empress of India. And that was where, Coronation Park, where King George V and Queen Mary were coronated as Emperor and Empress of India in 1911. So all the sculptures in this installation have some kind of void. Either it's the head, part of the face, or the feet, or the body is totally absent and you see only a robe. So there's no body, only a robe. And all these figures have lost, it's as if they have been stripped of their global status and authority. They are missing their wholeness. They have become partial. And also, as I mentioned, each plinth has a plaque with an excerpt from George Orwell's essay, Shooting an Elephant. And this, of course, is also meaningful. And I will not go over that because I can see that it's already probably the time, my time is over, is it?
But you were going on, so, and it was nice to listen to you because it is for many of us, I'm sure it's a new kind of discourse that we are listening to. So it went on very interesting. So I just didn't.
So sorry. Yeah,
No.
Yeah. And in fact, I wasn't able to, or I don't, I had so much, but this happens to all of us. We have so much to say about the things that excite us that we could go on for a whole day, but of course. So I don't know, shall I stop here or?
Yeah, maybe I'll ask you a couple of questions based
brilliant.
on what,
sorry.
and I reserve the rest for when we meet.
Oh,
I'll put it that way. Maybe when either you come to this India or maybe I visit to Lisbon, maybe then we can chat more about it.
Emphasis on when we meet, because that is, I've been 4 times to India, and there's so much more that I want to know.
Yes.
and let's hope this thing
goes off and we survive this.
Yeah, thank you so much. So
I'm just slightly curious to know about when you talk about this whole beheading process, is it when people, when this whole mob or with some kind of political agenda or whatever, this beheading takes place of statues, do you think people who are doing this have a sort of intention to reconstruct history or distort history, or maybe set up a new kind of narrative? What is it that goes into their mind? What is the agenda? the whole obvious agenda, of course, is there, but what is the implied kind of, tool that makes them do this kind of things? What is the impact? I mean, later on, like the beheading of the statue takes place. So what is the impact? So like something like a cause and effect is something that I want to know.
In fact, the impact is what's greatest. The public impact, I think it's what is greatest, because in fact, these statues, and I'll specifically talking about research that has been done on Confederate statues in the US, they are not visible. People didn't care about them, or not care, sorry, they didn't see them. They passed around them in the parks, but they didn't, they didn't notice. And there's lots of research about that. It's how people go through the statues, and probably you have also that feeling, and they don't see them. They are parts of the landscape, and they have become naturalized. And when people do this, they draw attention to that. And you don't need to behead them. You just need to do some graffitiing and makes it visible. And people start talking like, oh, that was something that should be done. We should draw attention to this, or you should not mess with that. That is part of history, and you have to respect that. So for me, the biggest impact is, of course, making it visible. And also there has been interesting research on how these parts of the landscape are parts of the landscape for a particular kind of person, the person that walks in the city, the people that is next to the statue, not the person that drives. It's the person, like, for example, in the US, mostly African Americans or people who are socially less privileged that have to walk and go through the statues, whereas more privileged people actually do not have to face that public art. So that's super important. But thinking about it, about that in another perspective, of course, this attention has been also weaponized. In the case of Portugal, for example, there are suspicions that this George Floyd aftermath thing was used by the far right to misguide people, in the sense that they did things that people thought were being done by Black Lives Matters activists, but in fact they weren't. So they were done just to, to make people angry against Black Lives Matter. So they were weaponizing all that. So it's very tricky. But again, going back to David Olusoga, it is history. So I'm very much into these acts. And again, there is also research that talks about how erecting statues is a form of violence also for some people. So it's about that. It's owning public art in a sense.
Yeah, because there is some sense of ownership that each individual starts having. So
exactly.
Also the effect is kind of predictable, that if I do this, this is the impact that it's going to generate. Because everybody is conscious of its existence and they associate with it. Like you said, it is a naturalized part of our lives. Yeah. So I'm so thankful. I don't see any questions, but if there are any for people who are viewing us, you can write to Dr. Cristina Mendes, and I'm sure she'll be happy to answer those questions. I'm sure it will lead to some new research areas where this becomes a kind of a discourse which we talk about in our research as well. So thank you once again.
Thank you so much.
And thanks again for sparing time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.